many thanks to the SLBI and Caroline for inviting us to join today. And just struggling, there we go, no? Right. So, and to Marlo for having the idea in the first place. It's a great opportunity to talk about permEzone and to introduce my collaborator, Sheena Shah, who's been involved with the pilot program that we've been running right from a very early stage, previously as director of the Permaculture Research Institute in Kenya, and subsequently volunteering her time as a member of our project board and acting as a liaison and coordinator with the teams in the field. And Sheena, would you like to introduce yourself and say a few words about your involvement?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Hugh. Thank you for having us on this webinar, and nice to see you all, some familiar faces there as well. So I'm Sheena. I'm from Nairobi, Kenya, and as Hugh mentioned, I have been part of the permEzone program now since 2017, and my role at the time was at PRI Kenya, and I was the director there. And Hugh had reached out to PRI Kenya to see if there were projects that were that could be part of the pilot program. And we had been working with quite a few projects in East Africa and mainly in Kenya, and we had some options for him, and we chose a project in Western Kenya, which we'll go through in Hugh's presentation. And then in our second phase, we started to work with a group in Uganda as well that we knew of. So it's been a pleasure to be part of permEzone and offer our expertise to help the program kind of unfold and help the people on the ground. And then I left the PRI Kenya in 2018, and I started my own consulting arm here in Nairobi called Harvesting for Good East Africa. And essentially it's using the same skills in training people in permaculture and just helping people set up their own kitchen gardens and helping them transform any space available and make it more productive. So as we go through our presentations, you'll be able to see more pictures and learn more about us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheena. And before I moved to California, my wife and I moved here in 2010. I was working in London as a systems engineer and project manager. And it's over 15 years ago now. You know, where did permEzone come from? And I trace it back to when I was working for Friends of the Earth in London. I had the opportunity to work there for a couple of years, and their focus on environmental justice got me interested in the overlap of environmental issues with human rights issues and international development issues. You know, often they're the same issues being looked at from different directions. So I decided to do a 3-year master's in development management at the Open University, which was a great course with a very strong emphasis on systems thinking as a way of helping to unpack some of the complex interacting issues in development. And learned a lot about development, also learned that all too often development programs don't have long-term positive impacts for local communities. And even the beneficial outcomes that are achieved often aren't sustained after the end of the intervention. My chief takeaway from it all was that all development is local. For development to be really sustained over the long term, it has to be owned by the local community. So how do you do international development? Core development is local. So I'm just going to start my presentation at this point. Now, it was at this point that we moved to California, and I was left stuck with this problem. And after we moved here, I got involved with a local project that was just getting started. And it introduced me to permaculture. And Just the name of the project was Mesa Harmony Garden, and it was basically taking an empty piece of land in our local community and turning it into a food forest, growing food for the local food bank. And I thought, okay, this is a chance for me to learn how to sort of do gardening in this completely new environment that I'd moved to. And so I was there for the very first work party, and you can see us here digging some swales as a way of capturing rainwater. And the whole thing had been set up as a demonstration for permaculture principles. I didn't know anything about permaculture at that early stage, but as the garden started to develop and grow, I mean, over the years, it's now become this incredibly lush landscape full of edible plants, and really such a beautiful contrast to what we started out with. And I was fascinated by permaculture and did my permaculture design course. And during the course of it, I had this big insight that permaculture is actually how we can solve the basic problem of how to do international development if all development is local. Instead of outsiders coming in telling people what to do, you teach people the skills to work it out for themselves and then support them through the process of putting their permaculture designs into practice. And this was the inception for the idea of permEzone, that it was looking at international development from an environmental perspective, and building on the research that I did for Friends of the Earth, which also informs my final research project for my studies in international development, which was research around sustainability issues in the biofuels industry. I learned a lot about the really bad news on how global agriculture is having negative impact. The large-scale industrial agriculture really having negative impacts on the environment and on local communities, and the extent to which so many communities of family farmers are struggling with increasing and crippling debt, and in all too many cases, farmers unable to feed themselves and their families. So the social and environmental issues are completely intertwined. So the idea of permEzone grew as a way of helping empowering communities of practice in farming communities to help them increase yields, expand local economies, improve nutrition and health, and enrich the local environment, all intertwined issues. And we came up with this idea of eco-social resilience as what we were aiming for. Now, I don't know if you've ever come across the idea of planetary boundaries. This was first published in 2009 in Ecology and Science, based on a paper from the Stockholm Resilience Centre. And to me, they identified all these different systems that are essential for life on Earth and how we're pushing the boundaries through our modern industrial civilization and economies. And I created this illustration of the 9 boundaries. The 3 red ones, the ones where we've already exceeded the safe boundaries. The orange ones are the ones where we're in the danger zone, and the green one, the ozone layer, is the only one where they feel that we're still in the safe zone. And looking at these systems, it seems to me that they're all impacted at one level or another by agriculture. So farmers really are on the front line in our interactions with the natural world. And all too often, the way we farm has negative impacts across the board. Now, I was looking back at this, preparing for this talk, and I discovered that Netflix is about to release a documentary in association with the Stockholm Resilience Centre and narrated by Sir David Attenborough, called Breaking Boundaries, The Science of Our Planet. And in fact, there is a 10-minute preview available to view on YouTube, and I really recommend that. It's a very interesting way of looking at the way that we're impacting the systems that we depend on for life. And it's kind of overlaps with the way that we started to think about planetary systems back in the mid-70s when the book The Limits to Growth was published. The first time really that the whole planet's been looked at as a system. So I developed a theory of change. Basically, how do you bring permaculture into international development? And the bottom line of increased yields, improved livelihoods, improved nutrition and well-being, ecological health, leading to eco-social resilience. And a big part of it is really changing norms, changing the way people think and behave, and getting away from the idea that modern farming is an industrial mindset, but that really there's so much to learn from indigenous place-based wisdom in combination with a scientific understanding of essential issues like soil health, the importance of biodiversity and carbon sequestration and so on. And if we can bring systems thinking in an accessible way and combine these skills to creating new farm designs that are suited to local conditions and needs, along with appropriate methods of agroecology and regenerative farming, we can start to help farming communities develop new norms of thinking and behaving. So I thought it was important to really think hard about what existing resources we can use rather than trying to do everything on our own or invent everything from scratch. And there are global networks of existing permaculture training centres. One of the first things I did when I was developing the programme was to do a survey with 50 permaculture training centres in less developed countries around the world. And the cell phone, everywhere you go in the world, that people have cell phones. That seems like a resource that could be used to help in communications and so on. And what we need to bring to the table to help develop and empower communities, we needed to provide training and support workers. And then the trained farmers themselves become the key resource going forward as they start to develop practices, like citizen science, working together to see what works, how to improve their farms and their lives. And we developed this idea of training a small group of farmers who would then develop model farms and then engage in farmer-to-farmer extension in their community and slowly build a community of practice around new ways of doing things. And they would then, own the process. And we decided we needed to run a fairly extensive pilot so we could build the evidence base that this is an effective approach and develop the training and resources for new projects going forward and start to develop a knowledge base, both in terms of how the program itself works, but also what works for the farming communities themselves in terms of changing approaches to farming. So there we were back in 2017 with this theory of change. And 2017 was when we launched the first pilot and started to explore the difference between the theory of change and the reality of change, which turns out to be, of course, a slightly more complex and messy business. And the bottom line starts to seem more like a kind of a hill to climb. But we did start the process in 2017, and it's been a hugely interesting and worthwhile journey. And I love this image that was shared from the very early days of the initiating the first pilot program, this sense of being ushered into the woods with no certainty of what lies ahead. So each pilot project starts with recruiting farmers, and here you can see Paul and Regan, who were involved in setting up and running the first pilot with a community of 10 farmers in Asumbi in Kenya. And they are profiling the farmers, finding out if they want to be involved in the program, whether they might be one of the lead farmers who go through the whole program of training and developing model farms and so on. And during this part of the pilot, Paul and Regan created a new organisation called Community Mobilisation for Regenerative Agriculture, which saw the first pilot through to completion and is now running our third pilot back in Kenya. And this whole idea of keeping that all development is local really informed the way that Paul and his team interacted with the farmers. And here you can see images from the very first workshop where the lead farmers got together, 10 lead farmers who are going to do the training. The very first time they met was to have a workshop where they decided for themselves what indicators would be used to measure the outcomes of the 2-year program. And we call this process mentoring, not monitoring. And it really is aimed at making sure that the farmers really understand that they own this whole program right from the start. So that they go on. The next workshop is where they co-design the training curriculum, so they can make sure that the things that they're interested in learning are included in the curriculum. And another aspect of keeping local, making use of local resources, is nicely illustrated by this farmer Joseph Abonio, who had already done a permaculture course and was he's pictured here in his food forest, and was very happy to share with other people engaged in the program about how his agroforestry system had really enhanced his soil, his coffee production and his livelihood, and that they were producing the food that they were eating themselves and having surplus to take to market. It was a great illustration of how effective this program was going to be and how it would help the other farmers. So here you can see the training taking place. It's a 3-month training, and this is also different to usually permaculture design courses are a very intensive 2-week course, but we wanted to spread it out to give the farmers time to take their new ideas home, think about what they were learning, discuss the implications, try some ideas out, come back and discuss everything next time around. And then at the end of the training, we then go into an 18-month support period in the project to round out the 2 years. And here you can see Stephen, one of the team members at Simra, working with the farmer, helping her as she develops her model farm. The impacts of the program, looking back, we have this model for measuring the impacts, and there were really some significant changes in the way that farmers were working together. And the team at Simra supported the community in developing their model farms, but also in developing new cooperative working structures to improve knowledge sharing and market access, basically working together. So by the end of the 2-year project, there were 250 farmers enrolled in the local network, and the lead farmers have registered a self-help group. They meet fortnightly, discuss their development issues, permaculture practices. And since the end of the pilot, Paul has been back and has done more research with them. There's a guy called David Yisrael Halevi who's doing his doctoral studies based on the research on permEzone. The farmers were really delighted to see Paul back and very happy to assist with that research. So we moved on in September 2018, we started our second pilot in Uganda, this time with the team at Broadfield Enterprises Uganda, with Charles Mugarura. And that's still ongoing. It's due to be completed at the end of this month. This time there were 20 farmers, lead farmers being trained. and they were able to benefit from everything we'd learned during the first pilot. We've really improved the process of getting the pilot started, making sure that everybody involved really understood the model that we were working with and how to engage the farmers and support them and so on. So the training went well. 20 farmers completed the program. It's a nice combination of teaching and practical work. And by the start of this year, they had just short of 200 farmers recruited into the network there in the community of Sanjay in Uganda, and a very strong farmers cooperative developing, with working on the farmer-to-farmer extension program, working together to market their crops, decide what crops they were going to focus on, setting up a peer group savings and loans program. And in the final months of the project that's going on now, we're really sort of focused on helping them to strengthen these community structures so that it keeps going in the community after we've finished our project. The phase 3, our third and final pilot, started in February in Kisa West in Kenya, working with the team at Simra again, building on their experience of the first pilot, this time training 30 farmers. And here you can see the initiation stage when they were interviewing and recruiting farmers and telling the community about the program to get them involved. And the training went on, and that is currently going on and is due to end at the end of this month, with the support stage starting in June. The training has been done in 2 groups of 15, but as 15 people was the maximum allowed under current regulations with COVID, but they've still been able to go ahead with the training in any case. And basically, you know, where permEzone came from, why and how we've been running the pilot. We've gathered a lot of evidence about the beneficial impact of this. And I'm going to hand you over to Sheena now to get her perspective on all of this. So hopefully that's, yeah, over to you, Sheena.
Thanks, Hugh. Thanks for that presentation. So I hope you all understood a little bit better about how it was initiated and how it has come this far 3 years down the line, and that we have 2 phases that have been successful. And now that we're on our phase 3 in Kenya again. So I just want to share a little bit about myself, and then I'll go back to some of the key stages of permEzone. I'll just share my screen shortly. Sorry. So I'm Sheena Shah again. I'm from Kenya. So I was born and raised here in Nairobi, Kenya, and you'll see some nice photos of some recent wildlife I've been seeing over the last few months and enjoying some outdoors. So this is the bounty of Africa, I guess. Oops. And so I have been part of permEzone, as I mentioned earlier, since 2017, part of the project team, alongside members from all over that have been helping us get this program started. Thanks to Hugh for initiating it. But on the other side, I run a business called Harvesting for Good East Africa here in Nairobi now, and it's basically around the same framework as you mentioned, training and empowerment. And I basically work with homeowners now and gardeners, and while still maintaining my consultation with NGOs and organizational development. But I saw a gap here in Nairobi, and I thought we needed to get people really amped up to use spaces available and grow their own food, at least a small percentage of it. And people were interested, but we just didn't focus so much in the urban areas. So prior to this, I was part of the Permaculture Research Institute of Kenya. And there's something around permaculture. The three ethics are care for the earth, care for the people, and then fair share. So we embody all these principles in all the work that we do. So that's good to know. And so part of PRI Kenya, I was part of PRI Kenya since inception. So that was in 2011, and I joined them in 2012 actually. But I was basically the education program manager for at least 5 of those years, or 4.5 of those years. And our aim was to educate and empower as many people within this topic that was quite new at the time, and people hadn't really caught on to permaculture. So it really stems from permanent agriculture. We're designing for resilience. We're helping farmers and individuals understand the principles, use this toolkit to really transform their landscapes and their livelihoods. And so part of our work at PRI Kenya was to bring people into the fold and run these workshops. So I took my permaculture design certification here in Kenya in 2011 and never looked back. So prior to that, I was actually a teacher in Montessori and early childhood. And I always wanted to do something that was larger than myself. And I found that permaculture was actually the way forward for me. So I'm still an educator, but in just a different spectrum altogether. And it's been very, very fulfilling. As you see those happy faces in those photos, often everyone that leaves a permaculture course feels very empowered and immediately want to go and transform any space that they can and help projects and communities really sustained to have sustained livelihoods. So we've worked with many communities in East Africa. This is up in Laikipia, up north, and working with Maasai groups and really working in degraded landscapes and helping them achieve something that would enable a livelihood. And so it was very fulfilling all those years doing this work and knowing that these projects are still continuing. So that's a little bit of what I was part of. And then I was later appointed the executive director of PRI Kenya, and where we worked with more partners and people, individuals in getting permaculture across, and also seeing that we could bring in some value-added products from these projects and really getting people talking about enterprise and how they could make a living out of this. So it was very fulfilling to see how many value-added products were coming in and how we were able to provide the markets and see how exciting that time was and that they've still continued. So I exited PRI Kenya in 2018. To start up Harvesting for Good East Africa, as I mentioned, and seeing a gap in the city and the urban areas, I wanted to bring the same understanding of permaculture and growing your own food and building this curiosity. As you see in these pictures, these are images that are taken in real time, and I love capturing moments like this where people are just so curious and want to learn about this and get outside and get dirty and use their spare time in learning something that would be transformative. So these are some of the courses that we run and really just get the word out there. And we use a lot of terms like bio-intensive gardening, where we're promoting more biodiversity and growing as much food in small areas as possible. So we basically select the plants for clients, we pick these up, and then we help actually put these gardens together for these clients. But at the same time, if they've got gardeners or key staff at the sites, we like to train them and empower them, because they will be actually maintaining this, so that there's less of us coming in, but more of them looking after it. And we just come in for follow-ups. And these people can actually take it back to the communities and back home and really start to understand how important this topic is, and just growing your own food really in a bio-intensive way, where you're getting more production from these small areas. It could be in a balcony, it could be in a front yard, and so forth. And so these are some of the trainings. You see lots of people coming in and just, again, curiosity, just learning. And some of these topics that we discuss are actually traditional practices. It's nothing really new, it's just reminders. And so it's been it's been interesting to watch how people just, you know, have this awe, like, oh, I didn't know that, or yes, my grandparents did this and we don't do it anymore. And then learning from them in a circle time of like what has come up for them that was important, and then seeing how people interact with each other and know that actually we all have the same common goal. So it's the same thing in a community that Hugh mentioned. When we bring the individuals together and we start to really unfold and like kind of tap into some of these topics, we start to see there's common ground and common interest. And that's how we start to build this transformative hub around us. So it's been really interesting to see that happen. And so this is some of the transformation that we've done in the urban areas, in just homes. People have these spaces here. And so we've actually made, you know, permaculture again is very aesthetic, but it's not just about the aesthetics, it's also how much you can grow in those edges and using these designs that look very nice, but can be very productive at the same time. So this is the groundwork of some of that. People's patios and balconies transformed. As you can see the image there on the left, it's just a barren, like just, we have lots of trees around us, but you know, we also want more plants. And so we have color. So when we come out in this pandemic, we've had to work at home. So the idea is like, you know, to come outside and be able to smell herbs and just feel good when you see color and flowers and plants and these tropical palms. And so everything is pretty functional. And we've seen a lot of interest in this time that people want to get more and more busy doing gardening with their kids and go and get some of their food from their garden and be able to cook with it and have these interesting projects with their families. So that's actually my parking lot at my home, just outside. And that is actually a berm. And it looks a lot more different now because I've just redone, but this is an older photo. And basically I wanted it to be an orchard. So it's a very small area and people walk around this compound. And so the idea was for them to also come out here and they could pick up the salad. So if you see that, that's nasturtiums, the edible flower. A, they're beautiful to look at, and B, you can eat the whole plant. And it has lots of vitamin C, so everything's functional. You got these deep violet flowers that attract bumblebees and bees. And then lots of trees have been put in, so they were coming up slowly. And it's all within an urban area and any space available. And then I have an indoor garden as well, a front yard that I can't really grow in the ground. So a lot of that is in pots. So it's achievable. The idea is to make it easy for people to actually get into this. And we make it very minimal in the beginning. And when they start to see the transformation themselves, they start to add in more themselves. And that's the idea, is that just minimal at first, and then seeing how it all comes up and then adding more with that. So starting small and steady is one of the principles of permaculture. So I come out here and I can pick up salads and produce and I bring it straight into my kitchen and cook with it. And neighbors can come out here. So one of the ethics was fair share. Neighbors can come out, and if we're not around, they can actually pick up the salad as well and use it. And we share seeds. And we say to them, you know, bring out your food scraps and put it into a compost area, which I have back there as well. And they start to see like, oh yeah, we could use the space to do so much together. And so we're also helping neighbors in the area to grow some of their own food using the same principles. So that's some of the work that I have been involved in and very happy to be part of. All right.
Sheena, there was a quick question in the chat there about what the plant was in the foreground of your picture there.
I could share that again. Is it in this particular slide?
Yeah, I think it was that slide.
I didn't get the question though.
The plant in the foreground, I'm thinking it's nasturtium, and you did mention nasturtium, I think.
Yeah, these are the edible flowers, and they bloom in different colors as well. So these are the orange ones, but you can get yellows and reds, and you can put them in salads and they look attractive, but they have so much vitamin C in them as well. A lot of people, you know, they consider this as a weed. It's actually growing all over here as well. And often we try and say to people, you can actually grow a lot of this and share it with other people because it's just cuttings and they grow invasively. So you just have to maintain it, but you can eat the leaves as well. So people don't know that, they just like the flower. So it's nice to kind of see people go like, oh, it actually tastes really good. It's very peppery. It tastes like a rocket or a regular or yeah, so it's nice to kind of see how people don't know much, and then when they start to observe more and actually interact with all of this, they start to teach people around them, like, you know, you could eat this, you can do this, you can grow this way, and I can share the cuttings. So that's a really nice way to connect with people. Okay, and then part of our permEzone pilot stages that Hugh mentioned in the presentation, obviously those images they shared are really powerful to see how community building is actually formed before actually starting the projects, and how the project staff actually go out there and select the lead farmers to be part of this. And these are the stronger individuals that we know that will become pioneers in the community. And part of this whole process is to document each stage. So one of the project managers actually have to do from the very get-go is to document each phase when they begin, and to see the difference in collecting this data and evaluating the process. And we actually have expertise on the board that they have expertise in monitoring and evaluation, and they often have one-on-one calls with the project staff and go through how to set up a data collection form. And then the project managers sit with the farmers, and they actually pick up the indicators that will be the most important to them to be able to form this next stage of the program. So in terms of even curriculum development, to how they're going to prepare their sessions. So, you know, within a permaculture framework, there is a standardized permaculture design certification course. But now with the community groups, they can't go through that process. It's very technical for them. So our job is to help the project managers come up with something that's really simple, but they come up with something that's going to work for these specific farmers, and pick up the indicators that will allow them to see what the farmers need the most. So within a permaculture framework, again, is also creating a needs list, and to be able to see that immediately. So you're able to tailor make something for those farmers. Now, we mentioned there's two phases, Kenya and Uganda. Now we have, again, the very unique thing about this is that the Kenyan group is going to be very different from the Ugandan group, even though in the same context of Africa, but the communities will react differently to different topics. And so that's the neat part of this, is that we're able to see that documented from both groups, and both groups can collaboratively work together and see what's working for them and work on challenges together and successes. And that allows us to see how far we're going. So it's very important for us to be able to document each stage and to see the differences, and then work with the project managers on the ground, and also help them where needed. But they facilitate the entire process and are able to report back to us and let us know how things are going. Recently, actually during the pandemic, the early stages, we had another facilitator out in the US who's very good at photo voice workshops. And so he conducted a virtual photo voice workshop with the Kenyan group, and it was received very well. The idea was for the farmers themselves to take really good images from their phones, so that they could actually share with us, because we could actually tell from an image, if taken well, where the challenges are, and then be able to go through it with them and see where we could help them. And so this workshop was conducted for the Kenyan group, where they learned how to take visuals from their smartphones and then be able to share that using WhatsApp. If they had that application, a lot of people here use that, and be able to share that with the project managers. And actually we saw there was a good response from that. Immediately, the images that we were receiving were a lot more clear, were very well detailed, and so we know that we have to continue this with them, because it's empowering them to feel I guess more of an ownership to the program, and feel as their leaders, and they're getting this training to enhance their skills, and then be able to deliver that to other members and feel like they're part of something that's really important. Would you like to share anything that I missed out?
I'd just like to, I realise we're running over a little bit, but I just want to say a few more words about the future. Let's just bring this screen back. Basically, where do we go from here? And while the third pilot is unfolding, it's due to run through to the end of next year, but we're already thinking about how we build on the experience of running the pilot and the accumulated evidence base that Sheena was talking about, all the data that we're collecting and so on. And two key objectives are, from my point of view, to avoid founder's syndrome, that I kind of get out of the way and let the program start developing without my continuing interference, but also to keep it local and ensure that all the participants enjoy a shared ownership of the program. So through our group discussions, a concept is starting to evolve. And the key part of that is to enshrine this idea of leadership by cooperation, that a culture of cooperation will be a key part of the new organisation that we want to create to take this forward, so that all the potential benefits we've seen from the pilots become available to ever more farming communities going forward. I think this is something that we're really seeing happen in practice on the ground with the communities that have taken part in the pilots. So the concept at the moment is that we've come up with this idea of a membership organisation, provisionally called the Farmers Alliance for Restoration. The idea is that there would be two top-level forms of membership: the actual organisations that are implementing the programme, for example, community mobilisation for regenerative agriculture in Kenya, Broadfield Enterprises Uganda, and the other type of membership would be the farmers' cooperatives that have come out of the programme, and through those cooperatives, the members of the cooperatives, the farmers themselves, who are part of those local communities of practice. Now, I have to say, throughout this pilot programme, we have this amazing project board that Sheena also referred to, who've been volunteering their time and expertise to shape the pilot, guide its development and implementation, coordinate each aspect of the work, and now starting to prepare for the next stage of growth. Going forward, we can't continue relying on volunteers. We have to really start paying people for doing all this incredible work. And make it a more professional process going forward. The focus of FAR we see as being community development, market access, and mentoring and training. And Joel on our board came up with this wonderful proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I really think that this encapsulates the whole idea of the cooperative culture going forward. So from now on, the donations we're hoping to raise will very much be going towards helping to develop the new organisation and turn the whole programme over to this new organisation owned by the people involved in delivering it and giving it its future course. We accept donations. That's the bottom line. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Hugh and Sheena, for